Lily Rapuano, thank you so much for coming on to episode 52 of the Path to Fall podcast. It's great having you back. I haven't seen you in a year.
Yeah,
really.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think probably last time I saw you was on Zoom last year in 11th grade English.
Yep.
And maybe for some people who don't know who you are, where you're coming from, you can do a brief introduction if that is all right.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Lily. I go to RPCS. I'm graduating this spring, or very soon, in about a month.
Yeah.
And I came to RPCS from McDonogh. I went to McDonogh from kindergarten through freshman year, and then I came to RPCS sophomore year. So I've only been going there about 3 years. And I've been co-ed every year of my life in school except for sophomore year.
Okay, so that last year coming to Gilman for classes was no
it felt
change. Felt normal.
It felt much more comfortable than my sophomore year at RPCS because I've been in classes with boys and girls, since I was in kindergarten. Like, I know at Calvert they do elementary school, they do like separate but like technically co-ed. At McDonogh it's all integrated. And then sophomore year at RPCS was like I had no coordinated classes because I think freshman and sophomore year they only do about like languages, and then I had 11th grade English with you was my only coordinated class last year, and now it's on Zoom, but most of my classes are coordinated. What
are your classes like this year? How has it been going for you this year during COVID?
I've been taking a lot of English classes. I'm really enjoying my course load this year, and in the earlier like parts of the year it was a little bit rough because it was hybrid, or at first, as you know, it was all online, and then it was hybrid. And then I went online for a while because COVID rates went up, and I wasn't really enjoying coming to school as much, just because of the winter and it was cold. But then I came back after February. I came back in March, and then that was 2 days a week. And then ever since spring break, we've been doing 4 days a week, and it's been excellent. It's been really nice to be back and like to see everybody.
Most part, people at RPCS are coming back in, and you have pretty much full classes now.
Most everybody in my grade is back. There are a few people who have been virtual all year who are staying virtual just to stick it out. But I think most people are back because they're realizing sort of it's the end, and they want to see everybody off.
Yeah. This is your last week of classes as a senior, right? I think today was we're going to meet on Wednesday, but my senior elective is the last time we're meeting this morning.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
This is a 3-day week for us. I've got 2 days of classes left.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do for it's a 2-week internship period, right? For RPCS?
So the way RPCS is doing it is, as a grade, we voted to sort of forego the senior projects and do like community service as a grade. So after this week, we have Thursday and Friday off of school, and then we have next week 3 days of community service. And, you could choose different ones. I think my friends and I are doing living classrooms. I can't remember which one.
So that starts next week. You start up with is it called the internship experience or?
Well, it used to be just senior projects, and you could pretty much do whatever you wanted. A lot of people did internships. A lot of people just I guess some people traveled, some people did creative projects, but this year, just community service. I know Gilman does senior encounter. That's mostly internships, right? Yeah,
I think they're still doing it this year. It might be a little condensed, but some guys in my class were telling me about what they're doing. Tem, I teach Tem this year, and he was on the podcast, and I think he's working on a farm or something. These guys have some cool things lined up, even though it's pretty short time. It's only 2 weeks, but did this year feel pretty fast, or was it just weird time-wise for you? We were talking about that today in my first period class. Some guys were like, this year flew by, and other guys were like, it was super slow.
I mean, looking back on it, it flew by. But, I remember how I felt day to day when I was online, like in the dead of winter. It was so slow.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it usually is. But I think particularly senior year, you look back and you're seeing like not just the year, but your whole high school career. And you're thinking, yeah, it really did fly by.
What were some of the highlights for you this year, given that it was so abnormal and you spent a lot of time online? Did you feel like you and your friends and your classmates found some silver lining, some highlights this year?
So, ironically, and what you wouldn't think would happen is that my friends and I have really become a lot more solidified this year, and like we have a much more defined group, and we are hanging out like all the time. So my mom this winter, she bought a house in Utah, and she was in and out over there, like moving in and everything. And so a lot of the time it was just me in my house, and I would force my friends. This is when I was online. I would force my friends, like, please come over. Like, I need people around. I need people to cook for, because I can't cook for myself, and I'll just end up eating, Taco Bell for every meal. We call my house the compound, because everybody's there for their online classes.
Oh, wow. Where in Utah?
She bought a house outside Park City.
Oh, cool.
And then obviously I was in Baltimore.
Is Park City pretty close to Salt Lake, or?
It's about 45 minutes east of Salt Lake.
So do you fly into Park City or fly into Salt Lake?
You fly into Salt Lake and then just drive over.
Cool. A lot of skiing this winter?
Very good skiing, yeah. That's why she bought the house. We're a big skiing family.
Cool.
And she's got a lot of friends out there.
That's awesome. So what's the plan for next year? You figured things out, University of Vermont, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going to University of Vermont. And I applied to this program, the Liberal Arts Scholars Program, where I got waitlisted, but then I got in. And I'm doing like a humanities program where there are sort of smaller classes, and it's just for freshman year, and you live in a dorm with everybody in that program. So it's a relatively large school, at least for me, for what I applied to. It's about 10,000 undergrad. And so I've sort of found the ability to make it feel smaller for myself, I think, in that, and then just like being able to live with those people.
How'd you find Vermont? Did you get to go up there at all this year? And how'd you really explore or come to know that school?
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to apply there, and then I did apply there as a safety school, because my friend Charlie Hiller, who's also going there with me, he was like, hey, you should apply there. I think you would like it. It's pretty cool. And so, I mean, it's weird how you end up places like, I thought my whole life I wanted to go to Brown, and then I got deferred. I got rejected there, but I'm very happy with my plan now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And great skiing up there, right?
Great skiing. Yeah, I'm really excited.
So when did you first get into skiing? How did you?
Oh, I've been skiing since I was 3. My dad grew up skiing, and he was a really, really good skier. And he skied like Stein Eriksen down the moguls, and he tried to teach my mom how to ski, and she was like, no, I will take professional lessons. I can't take this from you. And so they ended up just going to Utah out every year so that she could learn out west in the best snow. And then, when they started having kids, everybody got brought out there, and I would go to ski school in my little bunny hill all day and then meet up with them at the end of the day.
Oh, so you've had training and everything.
Yeah, I went to ski school up until like 8th grade, and I hated it so much because I just wanted to ski with my family, but I'm really glad I did it because, it's like important.
Yeah. So fun fact, I've never been skiing. My mom's from Colorado. She's from Boulder. Grew up there. I think she's definitely skied, but I've never even skied. So I don't really know what it's like. What do they teach you at ski school? Like technique and
So you start out when you're little on like the bunny hills, like it's an enclosed area. It's not just the small sort of flat part of the mountain. It's like a totally fenced off area, and they've got this like treadmill thing that you send you back up when you're like a little kid. It's called the magic carpet. So they send you up that, and then you ski down maybe like 20 yards at like a really, really small incline, just learning like, French fry pizza to go speed up and stop. And then, slowly they introduce like turns and stuff. And then you're on the mountain, and you're basically in like a duck line following your instructor with all the other kids. And then eventually you get good enough and you can do lessons in like the trees and stuff. It's really cool.
It's awesome. You're going to have a great time at Vermont.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
So humanities program, how did you decide on that?
So I'm majoring in philosophy, and I think in most schools that's considered a humanity, not a social science. I think it's a humanity. It's kind of hard to decide. But I was looking at the social sciences sort of classes that they offer in the Liberal Arts Scholars Program, and it was just like a lot of it was political science and stuff like that. And then I was looking at the humanities classes, and it was like media and deciphering media and things like that, which I'm much more interested in. So I figured those classes would probably go toward my major better, and I think just be very valuable to like teaching me how to think.
Yeah, for sure. Was that something that you became attracted to in high school, or when did you start to really think philosophy was something that you enjoyed doing?
Yeah, so it was definitely in high school. It was kind of over quarantine. I was on YouTube a lot all day, and you know how algorithms work. They can send you down rabbit holes, and I got down this sort of rabbit hole of like political theory, and then it went down this rabbit hole of like political theory to, you know, just general theory and like how to live your life. And then I found these like channels, and I really respected certain people who were talking about these things. And then I was like, and you know, in each of their videos, they would have their sources and they would list these books. And I started reading Camus. I read The Stranger, and I read The Myth of Sisyphus. And then I just got really into like all the texts and stuff.
Did you read the Plague?
I haven't read The Plague,
it's
no.
A little too real during COVID, but I think that was one of the best sellers on Amazon, like right when COVID hit.
Absolutely. I remember I went to the bookstore with Charlie Nurnberger, and he had to pick up a copy of The Plague for his dad.
Yep. Well, that's pretty cool, and I certainly know what the YouTube rabbit hole is like. I mean, I think that those algorithms, out of all social media and you know the things that we watch, Netflix, I think YouTube has the best kind of recommendations for you. I always fall down that hole.
YouTube can be dangerous though, the way that it can send people down the wrong path sometimes, and it can radicalize people in a really harmful way. But I think that, you know, having media that understands you can be beneficial much of the time. You just have to know, you know, the caveats.
So what were some of the other, you said you were taking a lot of English classes this year, and you did a lot of reading during quarantine. What else did you pick up during that time, and what have you read this year?
So, that's a good question. I don't really remember. I read, you know, it's all a blur. I read this book here, Her Body and Other Parties, which is a contemporary collection of short stories by Carmen Maria Machado. I read, you know, those Camus books. I'm reading right now a book called Manufacturing Consent, which is like book of media theory about the way that popular media and the money behind it can control popular opinion, and especially in political ways. So that's really interesting. But it is really funny because I'll be reading that like poolside, and people look at me and see a 1,000-page book, and they're like, "What are you doing?"
Is it that big?
I mean, like it's maybe 800 pages. It's pretty thick, and it's very dense.
Wow.
It's got all these examples from like history, and there's a lot of things in it that it's like, I don't have the total background knowledge to understand exactly what this is saying, but maybe one day I will.
We'll send you down those rabbit holes again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Tell me about media theory, because I don't know too much about it.
Well, I don't really either. It's mostly just, I don't know if media theory is the right word. It's a lot of it is intertwining with like political theory, and it's just sort of how like popular media, like news media, and a lot of the times movies, like big budget movies, can affect like the ways that a population will see something. Like if you think about like the Red Scare and like McCarthyism in America, which I don't know too much about either, is very much oriented towards like the way that communist countries were portrayed to justify sort of like America interfering in that, and like just sort of having these like figureheads go about it in a very, I don't know, like have moral appeals and have just a way to sway the populace. Yeah. And I mean, and it can go both ways.
So really how the media plays a hand in politicizing.
Yeah. Well, it plays a hand in politicizing and so it's called Manufacturing Consent, the book, because the media sort of, it does exactly what it says. It manufactures consent in the population for, you know, whether it's a military or, you know, it's a business making a certain political decision like Publicity Center or whatever it is. It sort of it forces the population, or not forces, but it sort of causes the population to be okay with it and to think that it's all right, whatever it is. I'm not that deep into the book, so I don't really know.
How did you go down, like how did you become interested in this subject?
I think that that's a good question. A lot of my life I've been just sort of accepting of, you know, whatever people are saying on the news and things like that. And I think that a lot of the time it can be falsified. And that's not like, I'm not saying fake news. I just mean like there's a certain thing in America where they'll call, Bernie Sanders a socialist, and, he's a social democrat. And they're two different things. And the socialism is like, I don't know, Venezuela. And Bernie Sanders is very much working within the system of America, but we're skewed toward the right in America, and that sort of plays a hand in all of the news stations, just sort of labeling things as they are in America and creating a scale that is sort of unique, that isn't aware of the rest of the world and like how far left or far right people really are. Right.
Yeah, I think I'm also interested in this media theory, but I kind of get all my opinions and my thoughts through long form podcasting. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, because instead of watching the news where there are just snippets shown, right? There's just snippets of the debate and there are sound bites, and you only get kind of the narrative of what the news media wants you to see. The long form podcast, it really allows you to get to know someone on a deeper level and find out more about their ideas. And that's why I think this is such a powerful tool, because you can really dive deeper into some of these narratives, some of these political theories, and what people really think, where it's not just, a 5-second clip.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think that it's really beneficial to get outside perspectives from individuals who aren't necessarily having other motivations behind them. Like if you think about big publications, like if you take, I think it's the Wall Street Journal, was bought by Jeff Bezos, and like he can push his agenda with his money, and then, the Koch brothers can push their agenda with their money, and they have a lot of media. And I think it's really, that's why I like long form YouTube videos too, is because it's these individuals doing their own research and sort of being independent of any outside forces. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and that's also where your previous point about you can get into this, but then you can go down the wrong rabbit holes, and you can start to be a little bit, conspiratorial. Absolutely. Which, some people might be onto something, but it is easy with these algorithms. They just feed you kind of what you want to hear and what you've clicked on before.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this one channel called Prager University on YouTube that it can be informative. I don't know about that. Personally, I don't think it can be particularly informative, but I haven't watched a lot of the videos, and I don't agree with a lot of things they're saying. They're very right wing, but they have this tactic of, it's very short form videos, and they have this tactic of displaying graphs without labeling the axes to sort of skew the opinion in a certain way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's everywhere. Yeah. And but it is interesting, and I think media theory, is that a major? Is that something that you could, or minor, or something you could study next
media
year?
Studies is a major, but I think that's sort of more oriented towards producing media and like in the intricacies of that business. I think philosophy will allow me to sort of take what I learn with that and apply it to popular media.
And I'm sure there are classes too that maybe focus in on
absolutely
on this, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
So what are some of the classes that you're taking this year at RPCS? Do you have any classes at Gilman this year, or is it all over there?
This year, I think the only class I took at Gilman, is this semester with Mr. Smith. It's creative writing.
Oh, cool.
It's an awesome class.
Great.
And then first semester, I was taking a class called Women in the Wilderness, which was really good. That was just about we learned a lot about Indigenous people, especially women. And we read a book called, what was it called? I can't remember what it was called. Okay. But it was about like homesteading in the Appalachia, and it was really good.
And that was a class over there?
Yeah, that was a class with Miss Fitzpatrick at RPCS, and then I'm taking her class again this semester, which is feminist Gothic literature. We read Jane Eyre and Sing Unburied Sing and Haunting of Hill House.
How was Sing Unburied Sing?
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah.
I like Jesmyn Ward a lot. She's very good at sort of weaving together a lot of aspects of people and their identities, and like sort of showing the whole picture is really interesting.
Yeah, she's a great writer. Mm-hmm. Taught Salvage the Bones. I don't know if I taught that last year in your class, but I taught it my first year teaching here at Gilman, and it's an amazing book.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that, and I like Jesmyn Ward a lot. I have only read Sing Unburied Sing, though. I never read Salvage the Bones. A lot of my friends did, though.
So you're enjoying your English classes. Any other teachers or classes that you've really liked this year? I feel like the seniors that I've talked to, I talked to Teddy Conover on here and some of my students, and Tem was on the podcast. They've really enjoyed their classes this year, even though it's been such a kind of dysfunctional year and difficult in a lot of ways.
Well, it's really nice because, as in the tri-school, you don't really get the opportunity to take electives until senior year, and you're still obviously taking your classes seriously, and you got your calculus and your APs or whatever it is. But at the same time, I get to take, all those English electives. And then first semester, I took a history elective, international relations, with Miss Archie, and that was a good class. We learned a lot about current events, and it's always fun to sort of dive into that in an academic sense rather than like a reactionary and just like a, like you said, the soundbite sense.
Yeah, for sure. I took an international relations class in college, and I think it was one of the hardest classes because we did a lot of game theory.
Yeah.
And anytime it's mathematics or just that kind of thinking it's not in my ballpark. So I had a hard time with that, but that sounds like a great one. Yeah,
that was fun. And we didn't delve too deep into it. It was mostly just like, here's what's happening in the refugee crisis and things like that. So it was like modern history, not exactly current events, but history that you don't learn in the AP curriculum because they don't care about that as much.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I enjoyed that.
So let me ask you, what was the biggest change, or what was maybe the difference that you noticed between RPCS and your longtime experience at McDonogh? Like, what was that transition like for you?
So, I went to McDonogh for 10 years. And it's interesting because I don't really remember that much of it. I have like little snippets, and you don't take a lot of memories of your middle school classes because it's like science, algebra, like it's not, interesting and specified electives. But my one English class, my freshman year English class, I took honors English. And it was all structured around Harkness discussions. That's one thing that McDonogh does really well in their English department is, you walk through Allen Building is their main upper school class building. And you peek into each classroom, and there's Spanish classrooms, and they have regular desks. And then like all the other classrooms are just like Harkness tables. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice. And, I really enjoy that structure. And we do some of that in the tri-school, but not a lot of the classes are structured, specifically that way. And that class my freshman year with, his name was Mr. Abbott. He's a really good guy. He taught a lot of short stories, and we read Huckleberry Finn and Catcher in the Rye.
Was that an American literature class at McDonogh?
It was American literature, yeah. We had a 6 American poets book with a lot of really wonderful poems. And that class really like changed the way that I was able to view the world just through seeing a piece of text and getting to take more out of it than was on the page. So
the Harkness method of an English class is really the only thing that he did, Dr. Abbott, Mr. Abbott?
Mr. Abbott, yeah.
Mr. Abbott in that class was really the only thing that he did to make that a Harkness discussion was have the furniture, like the table in the room, or is there something else that makes you think of a Harkness discussion?
Yeah, so I think that was more of a McDonogh thing, is saying like, we're going to have our English department do this structure this particular way, and we're going to go all in for it. So we're going to, set up the classrooms in this particular way. But I don't think that's necessary in all contexts. But I do think it's nice to show like, this is how it's going to be structured every day. We're never going to do like I don't know what English classes do, like presentations or anything. We're just going to do discussions. And the thing I think of when I think of that particular class is essentially the students ran it, and Mr. Abbott would sit at the head of the table, and he would sort of ask vague guiding questions, and he would say like, well, you guys are onto something here, but let's examine this part. What do you think of this? Like, why do you think she thinks this? Mm-hmm. And the thing that was really nice about that class was it was an honors class, and there was a lot of new people at McDonogh that are really smart, because it's really hard to get into McDonogh in high school versus when I came in kindergarten. But those sort of voices could drive the class in a really nice way. And even I think for Mr. Abbott, he would hear new ideas that he'd never heard, even though he'd been teaching for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. What was the expectation for the students? If it was student-centered and you were required to participate the whole time, how did he enforce those expectations on you?
I think that it was really just participation driven, and I don't think he was, keeping tallies. I think he was sort of looking back on the semester and thinking like, yeah, that person made really good points. That person contributed a lot. Or like, yeah, that person was quiet, but when they did speak up, they, made a lot of really good points and they sort of helped drive the class. And, I don't know, I wasn't inside his mind, but I never saw him keeping tallies or anything. And then we had vocab quizzes. So that was like a part of our grade too. And of course, essays.
Because I had the same experience more so in college than in high school. High school we didn't have a Harkness discussion or anything like that. But those are the classes that I always enjoyed. And that's how I try to set up my class too, is for the students to like teach everyone else, right? You learn most from your peers than you would from me just sitting up there and lecturing at you. So I'm just wondering maybe how that experience with Mr. Abbott might be different from your classes now. And
yeah, so when I first came to RPCS, my sophomore English class was very like, and most of the English classes I take have just been like, a teacher will present a slideshow and it'll have quotes on it, and we'll go around the classroom raising our hands and being like, yeah, I think this means this. I think it's interesting about this particular point, reveals this, or whatever it may be. And it was the teachers bringing to the table those particular quotations and those passages and things. And I think that can be very valuable too. But I am very, very glad that I had that freshman year English class beforehand that sort of taught me how to participate in a constructive way. And instead of just regurgitating the quotes back that are on the slideshow and saying like, yeah,
or having,
interesting.
Yeah, or having to talk about the quotes that the teacher finds most
exactly.
interesting, right? Rather than your own. So going to McDonogh co-ed school and having some coordinate classes between RPCS and Gilman, what differences do you notice between like the co-ed experience and then the all girls or all, just the all girls classes at RPCS?
Well, in sophomore year, so, you have to remember I only really had like 1 year of this experience.
Just sophomore year. Yeah.
And then, so I'm going to stick to talking about English classes in particular, because that's really where I thrive. But my English class was like, everybody I think felt more comfortable participating, and I was already comfortable participating because I enjoy English. I know that like I have some proficiency in it, but I think people were more comfortable than I had seen them in their coordinate classes. Like everybody was pretty rambunctious, more than girls I'd seen at McDonogh. Like I think everybody really just felt at home. And I don't think that's necessarily just a class thing. I think that's like the environment that's fostered when it's just girls and there aren't boys around, and it's not like performative or anything. And then in our coordinated class last year, I was ready to go. I was ready to participate.
You were ready to go, for sure.
Yeah, but I remember like many of the first weeks was oriented towards like icebreakers and like having people get to know each other so they're more comfortable. And it was weird to see how like the girls didn't want to talk and the guys, they didn't want to talk either. Yeah. In a lot of my classes at McDonogh, they were the boys were very forefront with their voices, and coming to a coordinated class, it's like everybody is so uncomfortable. Yeah,
well, you probably had a similar experience that I did, because I went to a public school my whole life and I had girls in my class all the time. So coming to Gilman and having like this experience where it was the first time the girls and the guys were in the same room, my first year teaching, it was like crickets. It was so hard to get everyone comfortable. So that's kind of what I tried to focus on in your class last year, was just making everyone like, this is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to just say what you think and what's on your mind, and, not have so many reservations. Like we're trying to explore a little bit here, but got to have some icebreakers, I think, in the beginning.
I think we all bonded over our Kahoot competitions.
Yeah, that's one of the ways. Yeah. Competition will bring out the true self, for sure. So Lily, looking back on your high school experience, 3 years at RPCS and 1 at McDonogh, but maybe we could just focus on RPCS since you're graduating from there. Who were some of the teachers that played a huge role in your life and really influenced you?
So, we could just talk about RPCS, but I do want to bring it back to Mr. Abbott for a second. He really influenced me. As I said before, he sort of helped me understand how to view the world and got me really interested in English. And then sophomore year, Miss RT, my AP World History teacher, she was tough on me. And I don't think she liked me sophomore year, but we have a good relationship now since I've been in her senior elective and just like been around school. She's great. She's a really good sort of adult to have in my life that I can rely on. And then I would say Miss Fitzpatrick from my English teacher, or from my English classes this year, has been really awesome. And then my history teacher last year, Miss Marks, AP US History, she's excellent. She's really fun to be around. I like her a lot. And she's, Katie Jurdy, she's Katie's advisor. So we're in there a lot. And I feel like history teachers are always much more approachable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's Miss Marks like? I don't know if I've met her in person.
Miss Marks I don't know how to describe her. She's very fun to be around. She's stressed out all the time, but like in an endearing way. And she's a really good teacher, and she's very on top of it. And she prepared us very well for the AP exam. And also, like, we're sitting in her classroom, and it's such dense material because it's this AP curriculum, and it's this new textbook, and it's like this thick, and it's like not really a textbook. It's like a book that you're flipping through, and it was, I think, maybe her first year teaching that. So that was hard. And then we're sitting in these classrooms, and she's just sort of reading off a slideshow because we have so little time to get to fill the curriculum before the AP exam, and like. It wasn't boring, and I would zone out in any other class, but like, I'm not that US history is particularly interesting to me, but like, it was fun. I really enjoyed the people in the class, people I was with, and Miss Marks. It was good.
I'm interested in the AP curriculum because I don't know what I think about AP classes in general. What was your experience like taking AP courses?
I definitely have some problems with AP courses, I think particularly for history. So I've taken... What have I taken APs in? I'm taking AP Psychology. I took AP Calculus. And those two have worked for me. Those are good because calculus is very like, it's just it is what it is. And psychology is a science. So it's sort of like that, but it's a little more, open to interpretation or whatever. But then history, I had some issues, particularly with US history, because just the way that College Board does it is they emphasize certain periods of history much, much more. Versus like you don't, there's nothing about Indigenous people on US history exam, if at all, like maybe one multiple choice question. And then
where does it start usually? Where does the course start?
Well, so I can't really remember the particular periods, but I think US history is separated into 9 periods, like in terms of the curriculum. So it starts, I think US history starts in 1492, like when the New World was discovered. And then, we don't really learn about any of the Indigenous genocide or anything like that. Miss Marks tried to put that in, but then she was like, we need to go. We don't have time to learn this. It's not going to be on the exam.
That's the only thing about AP is there's the time crunch in the subject matter crunch.
Yeah. Well, it's the time crunch that really gets it, because it's like, even if this isn't on the exam, a teacher could sort of implement that if they wanted to, if they thought it was important, but they don't have time,
right?
Especially for US history, because everything is very detailed. Like world history, things aren't very detailed because there's so much to cover. But for US history, it's like, when was this? What were the years that he was president? Like all that.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, it's something to think about as AP. I took AP Psych, which I loved. I loved that class. So thinking about if I'm an 8th grade girl at RPCS and I'm coming into the high school and, I don't know what to expect, what advice would you give someone kind of going into the upper school now that you're graduating?
I would say that, you have to engage with it, and you have to make friends. And for me, one of the highlights has been like, I have a friend group at Roland Park, and we have counterparts at Gilman. Like I'm equally close with the guys in our friend group as the girls. And it's really nice for me because like I've always been friends with guys, going to McDonogh. And I think it's important to engage with that, and important to engage with the tri-school, or at least, just the boys, to have sort of that interconnection. Like if you want to take Latin, take it at Gilman. Like if you want to take, like if you're not sure what language to take Latin just to go to Gilman. Like who knows what'll happen? It might be fun. And then I would say, and I sort of failed at this because I was still competitively swimming when I came to Roland Park. So I didn't have time to join any clubs, but that's important. And that's always like a good way to meet people, especially upperclassmen, and sort of like mentor you and just engage with the community.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. I just think there's so much value in those coordinate classes, because I'm just thinking about some of my friends in college who went to all boys schools, unlike Gilman, who don't have that option, right? They came to college and they're like, girls in the same class? This is so weird. I was like, it's really not, but I think it is. There's so much value to actually learning alongside girls and people who are different from you, and
Yeah.
You know, hearing a different perspective on things, especially in humanities and English classes.
That's the thing that I think I'm most excited for in college is just, and you know, people at University of Vermont are a little bit of a monolith. Like it's not a particularly diverse school because it's the Northeast and it's in Vermont. But I'm very excited to see like people who come from different backgrounds, you know, even if it's not so different, it's not so stark, but like I want to see other people's perspectives. And I think that I could get that anywhere that I would go to college. Like I'm excited to go into these discussion-based classes and hear like, well, here's what I have to bring to the table because of the things that I've experienced.
Yeah, it's the best. What is Burlington like? Have you been there yet?
Yeah, so we went and visited Burlington, me and Charlie Hiller and two of our friends, before we both decided to go there. And so Burlington is very much a college town. But it has this street that's like just pedestrian, no cars can go on it. And it's
really?
And it's like, I think it's Church Street. Cause it's like, you know, there's cross streets and then there's streets like this. But you know, there's this one that's just pedestrian. And it's super dog friendly. Dogs are everywhere. And there's a lot of like small business, like restaurants and things like that. And then there's a big Ben and Jerry's cause that's where they're based.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And then it's on Lake Champlain, which is really, really beautiful. We were there in a really good time, like where it wasn't too cold. It wasn't snowing, even though it's still kind of snowing up there. But we took pictures by the lake. It was really nice. We skipped rocks for like 2 hours. It was really fun.
Yeah, if you like the outdoors, that's the place to go.
Yeah, and then Charlie and I went up to the campus, and one of his like family friends or something like that, she gave us a tour around. I think she was a freshman. And then we both left and we were like, yeah, we're going to go here. I'm going to go here.
Is it in the mountains? Is there a mountain range right there? Or?
So it's like there's mountains surrounding it just because it's, I think like the Green Mountain Range, it's like small mountain range. But they do like a shuttle every like Friday, Saturday, Sunday to the mountains that are about like, I think 45 minutes away to go ski on. So that it's very like oriented towards like, yeah, we know what you want to do this weekend. We'll get you on the bus.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, tell me a little bit about your book recommendation. I hadn't heard of this, and I really expected you to bring in a Cormac McCarthy book because I know you're into his work. Yeah. But what is this book you brought?
So this is called Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. Who is a queer woman writing, you know, right now. It's not an old book. I think it came out in 2019. And she has one other book out. It's a memoir that I haven't read. But this book is a collection of short stories. And it's mostly, I mean, I don't think you can ascribe one theme to it. But I think maybe the overarching message of it is like the commodification of women's bodies and like just how sort of society can frame women in a certain light, but she does that not in a preachy way, but in a very supernatural way. So the first story in the book is called The Husband Stitch. And so this woman has a green ribbon around her neck. And the whole time her husband's like, let me touch the ribbon. I want to touch the ribbon. Because it's like the one part of her body that is inaccessible to him that she's like laid down the law and said like, no, you can't. And then spoilers, but at the end of the story, she lets him touch the ribbon and he unties it and her head falls off. So
oh my God.
It's like, and I think that's a reference to a book, I can't remember what it's called, something dark, where like every woman has a green ribbon somewhere on their body and at the end of the book, they untie it and she gets beheaded or something. It's like a reference to a different book or a different short story. But I really liked that one. And then there's another one called Real Women Have Bodies, where and this is what I like about it is that it's supernatural. It's like this woman's working at like a dress shop and she notices that like these girls are going missing. And she like one day she walks into the workshop where the woman who makes the dresses is, and it's like all these girls like in a figurative sense, but in sort of a real sense, are like ghosts being sewn into the dresses. So they're like becoming that thing that is being sold for like beautification and like glamorization.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's like, so you can take it in a literal sense, but it's also like sort of hard to understand because it's like, I don't understand how these women are being sewn into these dresses and they're ghosts, but they're physical and like what's going on. So it's very open to interpretation and it's really, really interesting.
Have you always really enjoyed a genre like this, or do you usually like more realistic works, or is this new for you? Or
this is a unique book, and I've never read anything like it. I'm sure there are things like it, and she's very inspired by Shirley Jackson.
I love Shirley Jackson.
Shirley Jackson's great. And we read Haunting of Hill House this semester, which I really enjoyed. And so I like that sort of like gothic, sort of supernatural, very, very ambiguous tone that both authors have. But I also really like we were talking about, I really like Cormac McCarthy, where it's just like there's this backdrop that may be a little hard to believe, like in The Road, but then it's a very, very human story. Or in Child of God, there's this backdrop that is easy to believe, and then it's like this sort of shocking story where you hope you never meet anything like the main character, Lester Ballard, in that.
I need to read that. What is the backdrop to Child of God? Well,
it takes place in Appalachia, and it's like this man gets out of jail after being falsely accused of rape, and he's crazy, and he's like antisocial in that he does not adhere to societal norms at all. And the whole I don't remember the book extremely well because I read it 2 years ago or a year ago.
And COVID has warped everything.
Yeah. So like, what is time anyway?
What is time?
But and then he does some really messed up stuff, and there's murder and there's some gross things, and it's very interesting though, because it's just sort of like unraveling this person's psyche. It's really interesting.
I would love to talk.
And it's short.
Is it short?
It's 140 pages.
Short, probably one of his shortest books.
Definitely, yeah.
I would love to talk to that guy, Cormac McCarthy. I wonder what he's like.
My mom's met him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad grew up and across the street from his sister. So like my grandmother and Cormac McCarthy's sister are like good friends, or they were when my dad was growing up.
Really?
Yeah, so my mom's met him at a dinner party.
Is he from New Mexico, or where is he from?
I don't know where he's from. I don't know very much about him.
I know he lives there now, but...
Yeah. He's a quiet guy, apparently.
He probably doesn't want to go on any podcasts like this.
Yeah. You don't want to delve into his
Is that
mind.
how you got into Cormac McCarthy? Is that connection, or is it just happen?
I didn't even know that until I was reading the book, and my mom comes in and she's like, "Oh, I like Cormac McCarthy. Did you know that Grammaire is friends with his sister?" And I was like, "Oh, cool. That's weird."
Did she tell you about their interaction when they met?
She told me a little bit about it. I mean, she was sat next to him, I think, at a dinner party. And like, she said, one thing is he loves the ladies and he doesn't want to talk about his books.
He probably doesn't want to say anything about.
Yeah, no, I mean.
Such an interesting guy.
Very interesting guy. He doesn't want to reveal too much, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I would either if I was.
I think that one major thing about being an author, if I were to ever do that, would be I'm never going to tell you what I intended about a certain work. I want you to take from it what you will.
Right. It's like a magician telling his tricks, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what was the creative writing course for you like this year? Did you enjoy doing your own writing?
Yeah. So first semester, I wrote a short story for my Women in the Wilderness class that was really interesting to me. And that was my sort of, I've written a lot of poetry like in school and outside of school just for fun. Not good poetry, but and then
it's a start.
That was the first time I wrote like a short story first semester. And then that was like the final project for first semester. So I immediately dove into the short story for our creative writing class. And the thing that Mr. Smith does really well is he can have you do all these writing exercises, and they can seem so futile and so annoying. Mm-hmm. But then you do them and you're like, okay, wait, I'm not going to include this bit, but like, since I added this sort of internal monologue from this character, I really understand her more, and I can like write her better without putting the exact motivations on the page. Just like me personally understanding this character's motivations can have me communicate them better without saying them explicitly. So it was really helpful, and he emphasizes revision a lot. And it was really helpful to get feedback from him on my short story and just sort of saying like the conventions of writing here, you could use this certain thing better, like the conflict could boil over in this way. It was really interesting to hear from him. What was
the hardest part of writing short stories for you? Was it trying to know your characters better or develop voice?
The hardest part for me, I think, was sort of getting what I meant out, because I have this thing where like if I'm doing something creative, I'll be falling asleep thinking about it. I'll wake up thinking about it. And it's not necessarily all constructive thoughts. It's not like, oh, look what could happen here. It's just like going over this person's like life from childhood to where they are now to see like what could have happened to them that would motivate them? And do I include that in the story, or do I just keep that to myself and have it just be part of their, psychology? And I think that it's really hard to get that out when you have this sort of intrinsic understanding, but you can't articulate it even to yourself. So writing it is really difficult.
Interesting. That sounds like a great class. I've talked to a few people in that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, cool. It sounds like you're having a good year. You're excited to graduate in a couple weeks and go to the next step. It's going to be awesome.
Scared.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a great conversation, and definitely look forward to seeing you and seeing, how your experience next year goes.
Absolutely. Great talking to you.
You're going to love it. Well, skiing up there, some books, nothing better.
Nothing better. Skiing and books.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.